Well, hot news today in the Syrian front. Syria says it has accepted the Russian plan to put its chemical weapons under international control. That could give President Obama a way out of the crisis. Wendy.
The president has been having a hard time building support for a U.S. strike on Syria because neither the public nor Congress supports an attack. Charlene Israel has the story.
President Obama addresses the nation tonight, calling for action against the Syrian government. But a possible diplomatic breakthrough could give a reluctant country the option it's been waiting for.
Is military strike on pause?
Absolutely.
President Obama told ABC's Diane Sawyer that the Assad regime could avoid a military strike if it turns over its chemical weapons.
I want to make sure that that norm against use of chemical weapons is maintained. If we can do that without a military strike, that is overwhelmingly my preference.
The suggestion was first made by Secretary of State John Kerry, but Russia quickly declared its support and got Damascus on board. President Obama called the proposal a potentially positive development, but he says it doesn't mean Congress should withdraw the threat of military action.
If, in fact, the choice is between a world in which dictators and other countries start believing it's acceptable to use chemical weapons on civilians and children, that will make it more dangerous for us.
But opposition on Capitol Hill to a military strike is growing. The president only has 44 votes in the House. 217 are needed. Even the Democratic-controlled Senate appears in doubt. Lawmakers using the new diplomatic developments to avoid or delay a vote on military action.
I see too much risk that a military strike could do more harm than good.
Now the American people and the international community wait to see how all of the new developments play out. Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Who would have thought that Vladimir Putin was going to save Obama? Well, that's the way it's worked out, because he was facing a severe setback in the Congress. The United States citizens were opposed to any military action in Syria, and so Russia steps in and Kerry steps in, and the two together, I don't know whose idea it was first, but the only problem that this thing raises, ladies and gentlemen, keep this in mind. If Syria puts its chemical weapons under international control, what happens to Israel's nuclear weapons? Do they go under international control too, or could they be forced to? What about the United States arsenal of everything? Would that be under international control? Would there be a move around the world? Well, Syria did it. Why don't you? Keep that in mind, the unintended consequences of our actions. Well, there's something else that would be unintended. If we overthrew Assad, the Syrian rebels apparently are very radical, and they're not exactly pro-Christian. As a matter of fact, they're keeping up their threats against Christians in that country. John Jessup has more on that story from Washington. Here's John.
Pat, Syrian rebels linked to al-Qaeda took over the Christian town of Malula over the weekend, and they threatened Christians there to convert or die. Breitbart News reports one witness says the rebels attacked Christian homes and churches. Another says, I saw the militants grabbing 5 villagers and threatening them and saying, either you convert to Islam or you will be beheaded. The village is only 25 miles from Damascus, and people there still speak Aramaic, the language of Jesus. Israel is beefing up its defenses in case the U.S. does strike Syria, and there's a retaliatory attack on the Jewish state. Preparations are underway even if the U.S. won't launch such a strike because of Russia's plan for Syria's chemical weapons. Chris Mitchell has that story.
Russia's foreign minister made the proposal, and Syria quickly welcomed the idea for the international community to collect and destroy Syria's chemical weapons.
Syria welcomes the Russian proposal out of concern for the lives of the Syrian people, the security of our country, and because it believes in the wisdom of the Russian leadership that seeks to avert American aggression against our people.
The Senate decided to delay its vote so it could consider Russia's proposal. In the meantime, Israel has distanced itself from the Syrian civil war and the U.S. buildup. But they could face retaliatory attacks from Syria in case of a U.S. military strike. So the government is taking no chances. We're in the hills on the outskirts of Jerusalem, and behind me is the Iron Dome anti-missile battery system. This marks the first time the Israeli army has ever deployed an active missile defense system in the Jerusalem area. Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon said earlier that Israel is ready to deal with the consequences of a U.S. military strike on Syria. Israelis are still lining up for gas masks, and for now, the world is waiting to see who will make the next move. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the hills of Jerusalem.
The president of Brazil is again demanding answers from the U.S. government about why the National Security Agency was spying on her country. The NSA is accused of monitoring the communications of the Brazilian president and a major state-run oil company. She says if it's true, the NSA was not acting to stop terrorism, but spying for business and economic interests. She was reacting to a report based on documents from NSA leaker Edward Snowden. It also said the agency was spying on Google and an international system for financial transactions. Women should start getting mammograms in their 40s rather than wait until they're 50. That's the finding from a new study from Harvard. A few years ago, a government group recommended that women wait until they're 50 to start getting mammograms. But the Harvard researchers studied breast cancer patients at Boston hospitals in the 1990s, and they found that half were under 50, and 71% had not gotten a mammogram. The American Cancer Society recommends that women start getting mammograms at 40. And Pat, I know the government study a few years ago was concerned about too many false positives and maybe too many unnecessary biopsies, but it looks like this new study trumps that.
Well, John, those biopsies, they call them lumpectomies and so forth, are extraordinarily painful to women, and it's one of those things that could be very damaging. Also, when they do those mammograms, they squeeze the breast tissue, and if there is cancer there, it could run the risk of spreading. But I'm pleased to report that there's a lady named Corey Servas. I used to do a show here. She's a doctor married to Bert Servas, and they owned a lot of interest, but the Saturday Evening Post was one of them. And she had something she called a mammobile, and she drove it around, and they did mammograms. And my wife had one, found a little bit of tissue that was out of line, and wound up having a mastectomy, and that was years and years ago, and she's healthy, praise the Lord, and no breast cancer.
Praise the Lord, yeah.
Have you done this, dear?
Yes, sir.
You did?
I believe in it, yeah, you got to do it. Got to do it. It's not very comfortable, you know.
You had one?
Oh, sure, oh yeah.
And you're clear? Clear
and free.
Well, don't keep having them over and over again. I don't know, once a month, I mean, once a year, I think it's too much. I don't know what.
Oh yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I probably should do it more than I do, but it's important to get it done.
Well, yeah, well, that's nice. Well, God bless you. We need you around. Don't catch anything bad.
All right.
Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is the first from the High Court to perform a gay marriage ceremony. That sparked criticism and controversy over her impartiality on the issue. But at a recent speaking event, Ginsburg said the legal acceptance of gay marriage reflects equal rights set out in the Constitution.
I see the genius of our Constitution and as our society is how much more embracive we have become.
Just 3 months after the Boy Scouts voted to allow gay members, a new faith-based organization has emerged as an alternative. Trail Life USA held its first national convention in Nashville over the weekend. More than 1,000 people attended, including former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. The organization will officially launch next year. The group says it will include boys from all backgrounds, including those struggling with same-sex attractions or gender confusion. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.